When he opened his eyes, a black man was bringing him back to life. Sanitäter Hans Krieger lay under the operating room lamp, staring at the doctor standing over him. His dark brown skin glistened with sweat. His face showed deep exhaustion, but his eyes held a human warmth. Hans's breath caught. 12 years. For 12 years, Nazi Germany had taught him that black people were Untermensch, subhuman, not people, animals, no rights, no value. In Hitler youth camps, they'd shown propaganda films. Blacks are primitive savages, the narrator had said, enemies of the white race. In SS training, they'd gone even further. They are not human, show no mercy. But now this non-human man had just spent 4 hours in surgery saving Hans's life. "Welcome back," the doctor said with a tired smile. "It was a tough surgery, but we made it. You're going to live." Hans's eyes filled with tears, because in that moment he understood. Everything he'd lived for 12 years was a lie, and facing the truth hurt more than any bullet. "Now I'm going to ask you a simple question. Does this story end happy or tragic? Write happy or tragic in the comments. At the end of the video, we'll see who was right. By the way, welcome to Frontline Diaries. Here, every day, I share incredible stories of war's unsung heroes. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. If you're ready, let's continue with this shocking story. The Ardennes Forest was painted in blood. SS Sanitäter Hans Krieger was medical personnel with the 1st SS Panzer Division. It was the first day of the Battle of the Bulge, and the German offensive was going full force. Hans was 22 years old, but his eyes were as tired as a 40-year-old man's. On the 3rd day of battle, when American artillery fire began, Hans was carrying a wounded soldier, a young SS trooper, his leg shattered, bleeding out. "Hold on!" Hans shouted. "I'm getting you to the hospital." Then it exploded. American artillery had found them. Hans fell to the ground from the blast's shock. At first, he didn't feel pain, just heat. When he looked at his stomach, he saw his uniform soaked in blood. Shrapnel. "Scheisse," he muttered. He was struggling to breathe. Chaos surrounded him. German lines were collapsing. American tanks were advancing. As Hans lay on the ground, he heard a voice. English. "Wounded here," German medic. American soldiers were approaching. Hans's heart began to race. He wore an SS uniform. Americans specifically targeted the SS. Because of war crimes, they often didn't even take prisoners. "They'll kill me," Hans thought. "They'll kill me now." But then, someone knelt beside him. Hans looked up with blurred vision. American Army uniform and a black face. Hans froze. The American soldier looked at Hans's wound, quick and professional. "Shrapnel in the abdomen," he said to another soldier. "Needs surgery immediately." Then he looked at Hans. "You're going to be okay, buddy. We're taking you to the field hospital." Hans spoke in German, feeling his voice tremble. Sie werden mich töten? You're going to kill me?" The American soldier shook his head. He continued in English. "No, we're going to save you." Hans couldn't believe it, because this man was black, and Nazi training had taught him for 12 years. Black people were the enemy, primitive, merciless, but now this man was trying to save him. As Hans was carried on the stretcher, he was on the edge of losing consciousness. The pain was unbearable. Blood flowing from his stomach had soaked his uniform. "Stay with me," the black American soldier shouted. "Don't you dare die on me." Hans tried to open his eyes. The man was still beside him. He had placed his hand on Hans's shoulder. Comforting gesture. This must be a mistake, Hans thought. The propaganda can't be wrong. Black people can't act like this. But they were. When they arrived at the field hospital, they immediately took Hans to the operating room. "SS uniform," said an American nurse, worried. "Should we?" "We treat everyone," said another voice, a deep, calm voice. "Bring him in." Hans looked toward that voice. The man speaking was a black American doctor. He had captain's rank. His face was serious but calm. "Let's save his life," the doctor said. "Then we'll worry about the rest." When Hans heard that sentence, he passed out in shock. While Hans was unconscious, Captain Dr. James Washington began the surgery. It lasted 4 hours. Shrapnel pieces had embedded in Hans's abdomen. One was near the liver, another had damaged the intestines. This is going to be close, Washington said to his assistants. Hand me the clamp. The surgical team worked silently. Washington made every move carefully. A nurse quietly asked, "Captain, why are we saving an SS soldier?" They've done terrible things. Washington paused, then he spoke. Because we're not like them. We're doctors. We save lives, all lives. The nurse nodded. Washington continued, "If we become like them, they win. Even if we win the war." That sentence echoed in the operating room. 4 hours later, the surgery was complete. "He's stable," Washington said, exhausted. "He'll live." When Hans opened his eyes, the first thing he felt was pain. But he was alive. Under the operating lamp, he saw the man standing by his bed, the black American doctor, holding a file, his face tired but satisfied. "Welcome back," the doctor said in broken German. "Surgery was successful. You're going to live." Hans's mouth went dry. For 12 years, Nazi Germany had taught him black people were an inferior race, not human, couldn't think, couldn't practice medicine. But now, this inferior race had pulled him back from death. Hans tried to speak. His voice was a whisper. "Warum?" "Why?" Washington understood. "Because you're a human being," he said, "and I'm a doctor." Hans's eyes filled with tears. In that moment, 12 years of Nazi training began to crack. As days passed, Hans began to heal. But physical healing was easier than mental confusion. Every day, Dr. Washington checked on him, looked at his wound, gave him medication, and every day, the propaganda in Hans's mind weakened a little more. One morning, as Washington was checking his wound, Hans asked, "Warum haben Sie mich gerettet?" "Ich bin SS." "Why did you save me?" "I'm SS." Washington paused. Then in German, he spoke slowly. "Because you're a human being, and I took an oath to save every human life." Hans nodded. But propaganda told us that you... He couldn't continue. Washington finished. "What did they tell you? That we're animals? Primitive? Not human?" Hans lowered his head in shame. "Yes." Washington sat down. "I know. Some American soldiers heard things too, about Germans, about SS. But I'm a doctor. I see humans. I don't see uniforms." That sentence settled into Hans's heart. As days passed, Hans and Washington began to talk. One evening, Washington told Hans his own story. "I'm from Alabama," he said. "There, life is hard for black people. There's discrimination. Some white people look at us the way Germans look at black people." Hans was surprised. "In America too?" Washington nodded. "Yes, but I wanted to study medicine. I worked very hard. I graduated from Howard University. Then I joined the Army." "Why?" Hans asked. "If they treat you badly..." Washington smiled. "Because I wanted to do what's right. My country isn't perfect, but it's better than Nazi Germany. And maybe, after the war, it will change." Hans was silent for a long time. Then he spoke. I was taught lies for 12 years. Washington nodded. "Yes, but now you see the truth. That's what matters." As Hans recovered, he saw other patients in the hospital, American soldiers, German prisoners, even civilians, and all were receiving the same care. One day, a young American soldier was brought in next to Hans. His leg was shattered. Dr. Washington went into surgery in the middle of the night. It lasted 6 hours. Toward morning, exhausted but successful, when Washington came out, Hans asked him, Don't you ever rest?" Washington smiled. "I rest, but first my patients need to get better." Hans nodded. You're really a doctor." Washington shrugged. "So are you. You're an SS medic, right? You saved people too." Hans hesitated. "Yes, but I only saved German soldiers." "Why?" Washington asked. Hans was silent. Because he knew the answer. Because of propaganda. As weeks passed, Hans's recovery continued, but the mental change was deeper than physical healing. One day, Hans asked Washington, "Doctor, don't you hate me?" "I'm SS. You know what we did." Washington paused, then he spoke. "Yes, I know. The SS did terrible things, committed war crimes, but you're medical personnel. You saved people. Are you guilty?" Hans lowered his head. "I don't know. I didn't question. I joined the SS because I thought the propaganda was true. And now, Washington asked. Hans raised his eyes. Now I know that everything was a lie. Black people aren't inferior. You're a better person than me, because you even save your enemy. Washington touched Hans's shoulder. You're learning too. That's what matters. After the war, Germany will need you, people who know the truth. Hans nodded, and he cried. In May 1945, Germany surrendered. When Hans heard the news in the POW camp, he felt mixed emotions. His country had lost, but at the same time, he felt relief. The war was over. In July 1945, Hans was going to be sent back to Germany. Before leaving, he found Dr. Washington. Doctor, he said, I don't know what to say. You saved my life, and you did more than that. You showed me the truth. Washington hugged Hans. Hans, you can be a good man. Your past doesn't have to define you. Your future is your choice. Hans couldn't hold back his tears. I make you a promise. When I return to Germany, I'll tell the truth. I'll tell people that propaganda was a lie, just like you showed me. Washington smiled. That's what the world needs. When Hans returned to Germany, he saw ruins. Cities were destroyed. People were hungry and sick. But Hans didn't give up. He began working at a local hospital. With limited resources, he treated the wounded. And every time he looked at a patient, he remembered Washington's words, "You're a human being, and I'm a doctor." In the 1950s, Hans began training young medical personnel. He taught them not just medicine, but humanity. Propaganda can lie to you, he would say, but the truth is always in humanity. If someone tells you a race is inferior, you must question it, because all humans are equal, and we medical personnel must know this best. In 1960, Hans received a letter from America. It was Dr. James Washington. The letter said, "Dear Hans, I hope this letter reaches you. Years have passed, but I never forgot you. You are a special patient to me, because you showed that we can change. Even if you were raised with propaganda, you can see the truth. In America, the civil rights movement is growing. Black people are fighting for equal rights. It's hard, but we're making progress. I tell people your story. I show them that hate is taught, but love and humanity can be taught too. I hope you've built a good life in Germany, and I hope you continue to tell the truth. With love, Dr. James Washington." Hans cried as he read the letter, and he wrote back, "Dear Dr. Washington, your letter is the most precious gift of my life. Every day I do what I promised you. I tell the truth. I tell people that propaganda was a lie. You saved my life, but more importantly, you saved my soul. Forever grateful, Hans Krieger." So did the story end happy or tragic? What did you write in the comments? Did you guess correctly? If this story moved you, don't forget to hit the like button. And to see a new Frontline Diaries story tomorrow, don't forget to subscribe. See you soon.